France is the most visited country on Earth. Over 90 million tourists arrive in France every single year, more than the entire population of France itself. And yet the real France, the one hiding behind the Eiffel Tower postcards and the romantic clichés, is so surprising, so contradictory, and so genuinely extraordinary that most of those 90 million visitors leave without ever seeing it. France gave the world the concept of human rights, invented modern democracy through revolution, produces more cheese varieties than there are days in the year, still owns territories on every single continent, and runs more of its electricity on nuclear power than almost any country on Earth. By the end of this video, France will look nothing like what you walked in expecting. FRNCE's Revolution of 1789 is the single most important political event of the modern era. When France's citizens rose up against King Louis XVI, they were not just overthrowing one monarch. They were dismantling an entire system of absolute royal power that had governed France and inspired governments across Europe for centuries. FRANCE's Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, adopted in August 1789, was the first modern document to articulate universal human rights as a political foundation. FRNCE's declaration directly influenced the United Nations. Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted in 1948, meaning the framework through which the entire world today discusses human rights traces directly back to France's revolution. France's revolution did not stay within France's borders. The revolutionary ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity spread across Europe so rapidly and so powerfully that France's revolution triggered a wave of political upheaval that toppled monarchies, inspired independence movements, and fundamentally reshaped every government on Earth. The world we live in today, with its democracies, its constitutions, its concept of citizen rights, is built on foundations that France laid in 1789. France's revolution also produced one of the most dramatic and most disturbing chapters in political history, the Reign of Terror. Between 1793 and 1794, FRNCE's revolutionary government executed somewhere between 17,000 and 40,000 people, including King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, in a period of political violence so extreme that it forced the entire world to confront the question of where revolution ends and tyranny begins. FRNCE's revolution ultimately produced Napoleon Bonaparte, a military genius from Corsica, who rose through France's revolutionary army to become Emperor of the French, conquer most of Europe, and reshape the legal and administrative systems of virtually every country his armies touched. FRNCE's Napoleonic Code, the legal framework Napoleon introduced, remains the foundation of legal systems in France, Belgium, Quebec, Louisiana, and dozens of other jurisdictions around the world today. France's geography contains something most Americans don't realize. France is not just a European country. France has overseas territories on every single continent on Earth, remnants of a colonial empire that once rivaled Britain's in scale and reach. FRANCE controls French Guiana in South America, not an independent country, but an actual region of France, as legally French as Paris, where France launches its space rockets from the Guiana Space Center. France has Réunion and Mayotte in the Indian Ocean, Martinique and Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, French Polynesia in the Pacific, including Tahiti, St. Pierre and Miquelon just off the coast of Canada, and territories in Antarctica. FRANCE's overseas territories mean that France has the largest exclusive economic zone in the world, the area of ocean over which France has sovereign rights to resources. FRNCE's ocean territory covers approximately 11 million square kilometers, larger than any other country including the United States, because France's scattered territories give it ocean rights across every major body of water on Earth. FRNCE's citizens in these territories are full French citizens. They carry France's passport, vote in France's elections, and are represented in France's parliament. A person born in Tahiti, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, is as legally French as someone born in central Paris, which is either a remarkable legacy of empire or a very French administrative outcome depending on your perspective. France runs approximately 70% of its entire electricity supply on nuclear power, the highest proportion of any country on Earth. While most of the world debates nuclear energy, France made its decision in the 1970s following the oil crisis and built one of the most comprehensive nuclear power programs ever implemented, with 56 reactors currently operating across France, France's nuclear commitment means France has some of the lowest carbon emissions per unit of electricity of any developed nation, and France actually exports electricity to neighboring countries, including Germany, which ironically shut down its own nuclear plants partly for environmental reasons. France powers a significant portion of Europe's electricity grid from nuclear plants that the rest of Europe often publicly criticizes, while quietly consuming the energy they produce. France also has an independent nuclear weapons arsenal, the Force de Frappe, with approximately 290 nuclear warheads, making France the world's third largest nuclear power after the United States and Russia. France developed its nuclear weapons specifically to maintain strategic independence from both American and Soviet influence during the Cold War, a decision that reveals something fundamental about how France sees itself, as a power that answers to nobody. Now the food section, because France's food culture deserves the extraordinary reputation it has, and then some. France has UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage status for its gastronomic meal traditions, recognizing not just specific dishes but the entire French approach to food, the selection, preparation and communal sharing of meals as a cultural practice worth protecting for all humanity. France produces over 1,600 distinct varieties of cheese. Charles de Gaulle famously asked how anyone could govern a country that has 246 varieties of cheese, and that number was already outdated when he said it. FRNC's cheese culture is so diverse that entire regions of France are defined by their cheese, and France's strict geographical protection laws mean that Camembert, Brie, Roquefort, and Comte can only carry those names if produced in their specific regions of France using traditional methods. FRNCE's bread culture is protected by an actual law, the Decret Pain, passed in 1993, which defines what can legally be called a traditional French baguette. France's baguette can only be made from wheat flour, water, yeast, and salt, with no additives, and must be made on the premises where it's sold rather than industrially produced. France passed a law to protect the quality of its bread, which tells you everything important about how seriously France takes its food. France's wine production is so significant that France and Italy compete annually for the title of world's largest wine producer. France's wine regions, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, the Loire Valley, Alsace, are so established and so precisely defined that the specific plot of land a vineyard sits on in France can determine a wine's value by orders of magnitude. FRNCE's concept of terroir, the idea that the specific soil, climate, and geography of a location fundamentally shapes what grows there, is now used by winemakers around the entire world. France's cuisine has given the world more culinary vocabulary than any other language. Soufflé, baguette, croissant, crème brûlée, foie gras, champagne, entrée, restaurant, chef, cuisine itself. The very words the entire world uses to discuss fine food are French, because France established the global standard for culinary excellence so thoroughly that even countries with no French heritage use French terminology to describe their best cooking. France has strange laws that will genuinely surprise you. In France, it is illegal to name a pig Napoleon, a law that has technically been on France's books since the 19th century, ostensibly to protect the dignity of a former emperor who remains a complicated national figure in France. Whether this law has ever actually been enforced in modern France is unclear, but it remains technically in effect. In France, it is illegal to kiss on railway platforms in certain stations, a law originally introduced in 1910 to prevent romantic farewells from causing train delays. France's railway kiss ban was introduced because extended goodbye kisses were genuinely slowing down France's train network, which in retrospect says something quite specific about how France's citizens were spending their time at stations in 1910. France has a law requiring all radio stations to play a minimum of 40% French-language music during peak listening hours, a cultural protection measure designed to defend France's music industry from being overwhelmed by English-language content. France takes the protection of its language so seriously that there is an official government body, the Académie Française, whose specific purpose is to protect the French language from foreign words, and which has been losing this battle steadily for approximately 300 years. France requires all citizens to maintain a breathalyzer kit in their car at all times when driving Or at least this was the law from 2012 until enforcement was suspended almost immediately after introduction, leaving France in the peculiar situation of having a law that technically exists but is not enforced. France has managed to create a mandatory safety requirement that the government itself decided not to actually mandate. France's language protection reveals something deep about French national identity. France's Académie Française was founded in 1635 and remains the official authority on the French language, responsible for ruling on which new words are acceptable. France's Académie regularly issues rulings replacing English loanwords with approved French alternatives, suggesting courriel instead of email, for example, and France's public sector is legally required to use these approved terms even when the rest of France's population has moved on. FRNCE speaks French as its national language, but France's regions contain significant linguistic minorities, including Breton speakers in Brittany, Alsatian speakers near the German border, Basque speakers in the southwest, Occitan speakers in the south, and Corsican speakers on Corsica. FRANCE's constitution makes French the official language of the Republic, and France has historically resisted giving official recognition to these minority languages in ways that some regional communities still find politically contentious. FRNCE's education system is one of the most centralized in the world. Every school in France follows the same national curriculum, set by France's Ministry of Education, meaning that every child of the same age in France is theoretically studying exactly the same material on exactly the same day, regardless of where in France they live. FRNCE's educational centralization is so complete that it was once said a French education minister could look at a clock and tell you exactly what page every student in France was on at that moment. France's Grandes Écoles system, elite higher education institutions separate from France's universities, produces a disproportionate share of France's political, business, and intellectual leadership. France's École Nationale d'Administration, known as ENA, trained so many of France's presidents, prime ministers, and senior officials that it became a symbol of entrenched elite reproduction in France, before being abolished in 2021, though its replacement institution serves largely the same function. FRNCE's political culture has produced some of the most significant left-right divisions of any Western democracy, and France's history of street protest is without equal in the developed world. France's workers strike with a frequency, a passion, and a level of public support that most other countries find astonishing. Transport strikes, public sector strikes, and mass demonstrations are regular features of France's political calendar rather than exceptional events. FRANCE's Yellow Vest movement, which began in 2018 as a protest against fuel tax increases and rapidly expanded into a broader movement against economic inequality and political disconnect, was one of the most sustained protest movements in modern France's history. FRNCE's government ultimately withdrew the fuel tax that triggered the movement, demonstrating that France's tradition of street activism remains a genuinely effective political force. France has had 5 separate republican constitutions since its revolution. The current Fifth Republic, established in 1958 under Charles de Gaulle, created a strong presidential system specifically designed to prevent the governmental instability that had plagued France's Fourth Republic. FRANCE's political history involves such dramatic and repeated constitutional reinvention that France has essentially rebuilt its entire system of government 5 times since 1789. France's relationship with its colonial history is one of the most significant unresolved questions in contemporary French society. France colonized significant portions of Africa, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, and the legacy of that colonial period continues to shape France's demographics, its politics, and its ongoing conversations about identity and belonging. France has a large and diverse immigrant population, particularly from North and West Africa, communities whose presence in France directly reflects France's colonial history. France's approach to integrating these communities, based on a republican model of assimilation that asks citizens to prioritize French national identity above ethnic or religious identity, has been both celebrated as a universal ideal and criticized as an erasure of cultural difference that France's own diversity makes increasingly difficult to maintain. Here is the final truth about France that brings everything together. France is the country that invented the modern idea that ordinary people have rights that no government can take away, and France is still arguing about exactly what those rights mean and who they apply to. with the same passion and the same willingness to take that argument into the streets that French citizens showed in 1789. France built the concept of the restaurant, the framework of human rights, the world's most influential culinary vocabulary, a nuclear arsenal that answers to nobody, and an empire whose territories still stretch across every ocean on Earth. France is not a museum of past greatness. France is a living, arguing, striking, cheese-producing, nuclear-powered, globally scattered democracy that is still figuring out what liberty, equality, and fraternity actually mean in practice, exactly as it has been since the revolution that gave those words to the world. Subscribe to Untold Facts because France has been hiding its most extraordinary story behind a very beautiful postcard for centuries. And now you finally know what is actually inside it.